But before we get started, let's figure out how to get to Saudi Arabia, like at all. Entering Saudi Arabia is tough for an ordinary person. But my main goal of visiting was, of course, a pilgrimage to this country. As a pilgrim, reaching Saudi Arabia is easy. I flew with Marwa and they efficiently handled all the paperwork for me in a week, enabling me to arrive in Saudi Arabia worry-free. The first city a pilgrim visits is Medina. Initially, as a pilgrim, you fly to Jeddah, and from there you travel to the city of Medina. And in Medina, you already see this. Medina is a significant city for Muslims. It has witnessed important historical events, including the migration of Prophet Muhammad and the Battle of Uhud, which will be discussed later in more detail. Currently, Medina is a modern city with mind-blowing architecture. The buildings and Arabic style here are simply wow. And here, basically, Saudi Arabia, not to mention Medina itself, is not used to the camera at all, and many times people just approached me, some people introduced themselves, talked, and for them it's very new to meet someone with a camera. They asked if I was a tourist, what my purpose was and what to do in general. And they were really friendly people. But the city itself is also called the Mosque City, precisely because the second most important mosque for Islam, the Al-Nabawi Mosque, is located within the city. Sorry. What is up?
What's up?
My mistake! This mosque was constructed during the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad in 622 AD. The subsequent Islamic rulers or caliphs continuously expanded this mosque. Currently, around 600k people are in Al-Nabawi, and the mosque's territory is still growing. In essence, there are ongoing construction sites, and they will keep expanding. The layout of this mosque was adopted for other mosques around the world, and even the prototype of this mosque, for example, the fact that there is an open sky, sharp angles and so on, was later applied to the mosque in Jerusalem and Mecca. The mosque also served as a venue for cultural and social events, courts and a religious school. Everything was happening right on the territory of this very mosque. Moreover, the mosque is next to the Green Dome, which was the dwelling of the Prophet Muhammad. That's where the Prophet Muhammad is buried. Unfortunately, I couldn't take any pictures inside because there were a ton of security guards on the premises, and they wouldn't even let me in with my bag. And indeed, being in this mosque, performing prayer here, it's just an indescribable feeling, full of tranquility, and indeed, you are here. You simply forget about all other events in your life. Your mind just clears up. The ambiance in this place, and currently I'm even capturing this video at the mosque, you can hear how quiet it is here. Just here you can hear the sounds of little birds and stuff. Just freaking awesome. All of this is built on an absolute desert. There was absolutely nothing at this spot, and what is even more thrilling is that it is currently happening right here. Total serenity, absolutely. Dang, I'm completely at a loss for words to accurately describe this. I do not know. And everyone who was in this mosque stated exactly the same thing. Impossible to describe the feeling.
You come in, you even have it in your head.
No thoughts. You simply do not understand, you know.
You can manage your tears even with Arabic.
I am unable to put it into words and describe it accurately. There is also a cemetery known as Al-Baqaya, located next to the mosque area. The cemetery is the final resting place for the followers of the Prophet Muhammad, and it is also where all the pilgrims who visit Medina and pass away are buried. Saudi Arabia is a strictly Islamic state, so it's pretty tough for an ordinary traveler to get a visa to Saudi Arabia, and non-Muslims are completely forbidden from visiting the cities of Medina and Mecca. But now the government has made it easier for regular travelers to get a visa, and Saudi Arabia is opening up to the world. We will discuss later. Around the mosque, everything is adorned with tourist zones, sales, markets, cafes, etc. Currently, at present, it is not the season, so most of the shops are closed and even the hotels are closed. And like that, this city is called the City of Mosques. After walking, I thought the whole city is just a mosque and the roads that lead to them. But in the evening, when I went up to the roof, I saw a huge city with over 500,000 residents and even more people who visit there. In Saudi, they can have 10-15 million pilgrims visiting in a year, and of course, they also visit Medina. But now, firstly, it's not the season, and secondly, due to quarantine measures, there are very few people on the streets, so the stores are closed. In Medina, you can also find signs for passage even between the road, indicating gender separation. Men pass through this area, women pass through this area, and also in restaurants, cafes, and similar places. And even in restaurants, there are usually booths where families sit inside so that no one can see you in principle. And of course, everywhere there are flags of the kingdom. Everywhere there are photos of the king and prince. And here I really like it when they shoot. I shoot on my phone. Well, I guess you've heard it too.
What basically in Saudi?
The Saudis have a peculiar attitude towards filming. Yes, I am interested in participating in the shooting. By the way, just now I attempted to enter the mosque carrying a camera in my backpack. A security guard said no cameras allowed. After the shot, they took me to the department, explained filming there is highly undesirable, and gave me a warning. But there's a chance they might just throw you in the slammer for 10-15 days. So be careful.
Heading up Mount Uhud now, another tour today. It's going to be interesting and beautiful, naturally.
Prior to Mount Uhud, we'll visit Al-Yaqub Mosque, the first mosque in Islamic history.
A musical composition performed in the Arabic language. And he stated, expressing gratitude to God, who guided us to numerous individuals who have faith. Sulaiman Dawood returned and uttered, "O Lord, please refrain from inquiring about my current activities." Singing. Hey. Foreign nation or territory.
Koba means the name of a well and a village. According to one version, during the migration of the Prophet Muhammad from Mecca to Medina, he stopped for several days, waiting for some of his companions in this place. At that time, the Prophet, to fulfill the requests of the residents of Koba village, with his followers, started building this mosque. The Prophet Muhammad himself helped build the mosque alongside his companions and other Muslims. And also in one of the hadiths, it is mentioned that the prayer performed specifically in this mosque is equal to performing a whole Umrah. The modern Al-Yaqub Mosque is an Egyptian architectural and construction product. It is a beautiful, massive, snow-white building with straight angles, multiple domes and a large adjoining area. Before, this area was just 32 square, and despite the fact that a huge number of pilgrims, tourists visit this mosque, there is still an opportunity to stop in it and perform namaz.
Well, let's keep going.
As you drive on Saudi roads, you realize if you're a resident, it's tough without a car. Huge roads, no traffic lights, no pedestrian crossings, and even if you're a pedestrian, you'll have to jaywalk, and it'll be quite a hassle. And mostly, roadside taxis are used for getting around the city.
By the way, speaking of taxis, here in general there is of course Uber, but mostly everyone uses these kinds of cars that are practically everywhere. These are cars without any identifying signs and so on, just cars standing there naturally burnt to a crisp like it usually happens with Arabs, and you just walk up, ask and go. It's even cheaper to get in than, for example, to take an Uber. Now that's what I call a taxi, just bare bones.
The upcoming stop is also one of the significant historical events in Islam, Mount Uhud.
You can tell a bunch of stories about this guru, but I think more in detail and more.
Curious what our guides will say.
Americans are getting ready. They're getting ready, gathering an army, equipping the best horsemen, the best army, the best sabers, all the weaponry they can get. Approx 3,000 people. Among them, Khalid and Banu Walid haven't embraced Islam. Also, top commanders of that time among the Arabs were present. And Muslims. In Medina, there were three groups. They are the immigrants from Mecca, the Muhajirs. These are the Medinans, the Ansar. And the third group were the Jews. Muslims, aware of the approaching mushriks from Mecca, start getting concerned. They know that the army is large. They know that Arabs have a tendency to seek revenge. And here the Muslims got scared, prepared an army. How much could you do? They're gathering an army, and they decide where to fight. When he says, let's go out, they go. Out, we'll find a spot where our rear will be secure. We'll choose a narrow place, and even though we'll be fewer, we'll be able to face a larger army. Proxlus himself chooses this place right here. He stands between this here mountain. It used to be bigger before. Between Uhud. Uhud is a mountain. Here's where it starts, there's where it ends. And she keeps going, about 7 to 8 kilometers away. We know around 700, 800 people from the hypocrites. They're gone. They understand there aren't many Muslims. They comprehend that 3,000 individuals cannot resist 9,000. They depart punctually. Only Proxovo remains. His army decreases by 1/3. 1,000 people leave. 1 in 5 of them already. There is only one location where they can pass through. This particular area is a dried up riverbed. If Muslims are here, Proxus knows Khalid's cavalry can flank them in battle, striking from behind. This exploits their vulnerability and deals a decisive blow to the Muslims. He understands it, he's placing the main army there, and he positions archers on this mountain, led by Abdullah and Banjubair. And he tells them, under no circumstances should they bring up scary examples. No matter what happens, you can't leave here. Even if he says Muslims fly in, they'll snatch big birds like that, carry them away, you won't help, you're here till the end. The battle begins, and the Muslims, inspired by the fact that the Prophet is with them, by the fact that their families are left in Medina, that's what's fueling all this tension. With fewer Muslims, they start winning. The Meccans retreat and some of them begin to run in fear. Muslims there start running after them to take trophies. In battle, losing side throws weapons, money, everything for winning side to take, and they don't run after them. And these archers, seeing that the battle is won, start running after them. All this time, Khalid stood there with his squad waiting. He knew what would happen. He is experienced. He takes his squad, rides down there on horses in a hurry, goes around that mountain, and launches a surprise attack on the Muslims from behind.
And here there are disagreements in terms of some stating that Muslims actually lost, while others indicate that they won, and others claim that even if they did lose, it was still their victory. Also in Ukuda, there's a graveyard where the warriors who died in this battle are buried.
A local resident invited us to visit him, and right now we're going to experience some Arab hospitality.
Everyone globally knows Arab hospitality, but let's discuss its reality to start.
They own a dwelling that has been constructed.
Arabs reside in private residences and they conceal all the fascinating things behind the fence. Upon entering, you will find yourself in a whole kingdom, for real. It's remarkable that nearly every Arab household has a balcony, providing a space to step outside, lie down, savor a coffee, unwind, and rejuvenate. And this is Ubaid, the very resident who actually invited us over. And UBAID treated us to a huge amount of meat. And according to Ubaid, he himself slaughtered this ram 3 days ago. And on this day, I just fell in love with Arab cuisine. Meat and rice are typically in Arab dishes, with choices like chicken, camel, or kovyaj being common. And all these dishes, they are very tasty.
Then tatiri with rice, they're taking all. Now you'll see.
Then the azan sounded. And during the azan, all the shops in this area close, and it takes approximately 10 to 20 minutes. That occurs 4 times every day, while we made the decision to go to the mosque to carry out the namaz. Official data shows around 100k mosques in Saudi Arabia, compared to about 80k mosques in Turkey. Each mosque in Saudi Arabia has distinct interior and exterior designs. Some feature open skies, while others showcase domes. Certain mosques still adhere to the Turkish Ottoman architectural style. Well, the next day was the very day we came to Saudi Arabia for in the first place. And this is the Umrah pilgrimage. Before you kick the bucket, you gotta visit the Big Apple.
Mikad is where you prepare for the final battle.
And on the Mikado, you enter a state of ihram, which is a state of ritual purity. When you enter the state of ihram, you have to put on some special clothes.
When corrupt, unable to shoot anything on person basically, well, if entangled there, even socks, including, need to be removed. So they just showed how to put it on correctly. I put it on, and it was like totally awesome. Before it was a little awkward, but now, when I put it on correctly, it feels really awesome.
Then we headed to the Holy Grail itself. The road from Medina to Mecca takes about 5 hours. And throughout the journey, it is desirable to say something like Liyabaik. And upon our arrival at the precise location of Mecca, we witnessed this sight. After you kick the bucket, which is a way of saying you die, you gotta get out of the temple state. And to get out of the temple state, you gotta either chop off a small part of your hair or shave your mustache completely. After departing the mosque, there are numerous barbers who can perform the task very quickly. They have the ability to either shave or trim your hair so that you can leave that location. Allow me to attempt to depict the emotions I experienced, for instance, upon my initial encounter with the Kaaba. The majority of individuals in my group were simply overcome with intense feelings, weeping and sobbing uncontrollably. However, when I laid eyes on the Kaaba for the very first time, I was rendered immobile, with all thoughts vanishing from my mind. I gazed at it, and within the depths of your soul, you sense a certain constriction in your chest, so to speak, and you simply admire it. The following day we made our way back to the Al-Haram Mosque, eager to once again bask in its sacred atmosphere and reflect on the profound significance of our experience. Sadly, they don't allow anyone in regular clothes into the Kaaba, only if you're in ihram and in a state of ritual purity. But let's talk a little bit about the mosque. Al-Haram is the most significant mosque in Islam, like ever. It's like number one, you know? A vast crowd of pilgrims, totaling in the tens of millions, flocks here to perform the holy rituals of Umrah or Hajj. Approximately 1 million individuals attend Friday prayer. Just envision 1 million people gathered in a single mosque. This is still in quarantine conditions. Naturally, there is a shopping center in front of the mosque where you can find expensive hotels, quality service, and more, but we'll get back to that later. One thing I noticed is that there is more movement in Mecca, more people. And even if you stop in front of the mosque just to talk to someone, a guard will come up to you and ask you not to stop so as not to slow down the movement. But in Mecca, you can often come across people who are just sitting somewhere, eating, and someone even sleeping. I'll tell you more in detail. I'll tell you about Mecca at the very end.